I still remember the exact moment my father looked up from my business proposal and said the 4 words that would split my life in half. It's a big risk. I was 26. I'd spent 8 months building a clean energy logistics platform from the ground up. The beta version was already running. Real customers were using it. I had revenue projections, market analysis, letters of intent from 3 companies in New Jersey. All I needed was $40,000. $40,000. Not to party in Europe. Not to buy a car I couldn't afford. To hire 2 developers and launch a pilot program that could actually scale. We were sitting at the same kitchen table where I'd done calculus homework in high school. The house in Connecticut still smelled like my mom's coffee and whatever candle she'd bought that month. Everything felt safe. Familiar. I thought this would be easy. My dad, who'd made his career in commercial real estate, who understood ROI and market timing, barely got past page 3 before he leaned back in his chair. My mom reached across the table and squeezed my hand. The kind of squeeze that's supposed to be comforting but actually makes your stomach drop. "We just don't want to see you lose everything," she said softly. I laughed. It came out louder than I meant it to. "I've already risked everything," I said. "I'm just asking for help finishing what I started." They looked at each other. One of those long, silent conversations that parents have when they've already decided something and don't want to say it out loud. My dad closed the folder. "We can't," he said. "Not like this. Not like this." What did that even mean? I waited for the counteroffer. The conditions. The lecture about adjusting my timeline or finding a co-founder first. Nothing came. Just 2 people who raised me to work hard and dream big, telling me no without explanation. I gathered my papers, mumbled something about understanding, and left before they could see my hands shaking. On the drive back to the city, I made myself a promise. I'd build this company anyway. Without their money. Without their belief. And when it worked, not if, when, they'd realize what they'd missed. What I didn't know yet was what they'd given someone else. Or why they really said no. 2 years in Brooklyn taught me exactly how much a person can survive on. The answer is, not much, but more than you think. I slept on my friend Kira's couch for 7 months. The kind of couch that's too short for anyone over 5'6", with a spring that dug into my right shoulder blade every single night. I kept my clothes in 2 suitcases under her coffee table. The work never stopped. 18-hour days became normal. I'd take consulting gigs during the day, helping other startups fix their supply chain problems, then code until 3 in the morning. My platform was growing, slowly, but growing. I maxed out 2 credit cards. Then a third. Every rejection email felt personal. Every investor who said, "Interesting concept, wrong timing," made me want to throw my laptop across the room. But I smiled through all of it. Said thank you. Sent follow-up notes. My parents called once a month, maybe. Surface-level conversations about weather and holidays. They never asked about the company. I stopped mentioning it. Levi called even less. My younger brother had moved to California 2 years before I started my company. Chasing what he called opportunities, though he never specified what kind. He'd mentioned San Francisco, then LA, then somewhere north I couldn't quite pin down. I didn't think much of it. Levi had always been the dreamer. The one with big ideas that never quite solidified into actual plans. Meanwhile, I was landing real contracts. Small ones at first, a logistics optimization project in Illinois, a consulting deal with a utility company in Washington. Nothing huge, but enough to prove the concept worked. I didn't announce these wins on social media. Didn't send press releases. Some bitter part of me wanted to wait. To have something so undeniable that when I finally told my parents, they'd have to admit they were wrong. Then, one December night, my phone rang at almost midnight. My cousin Theo. Calling from some bar in Boston, half drunk and laughing about something. "Did your parents tell you?" he asked. "Tell me what?" "About Levi." My entire body went cold. "What about him?" Silence. Then, 575,000. I made Theo repeat it 3 times. $575,000. For a vineyard. In Napa Valley. My brother, who'd barely held a job for more than 8 months, who I'd last heard was figuring things out somewhere in Northern California, had received over $500,000 from our parents. The same parents who told me 40,000 was too big a risk. "You're lying," I said. "I swear I'm not." Theo's voice dropped, suddenly more sober. "I thought you knew. I figured they would have told you." They hadn't told me anything. After I hung up, I sat on Kira's couch in the dark for 20 minutes, just staring at the wall. Then I opened my laptop. It took less than 10 minutes to find it. Levi had gone all in on the branding. There was a website with professional photos, rolling hills, neat rows of grapevines, a modern tasting room that looked like something out of a design magazine. Cross Valley Vineyards, where tradition meets innovation. Tradition. He was 24 years old. The About page had a photo of him in a button-down shirt, arms crossed, looking thoughtful against a sunset backdrop. The bio talked about a lifelong passion for winemaking and commitment to sustainable agriculture. Lifelong passion. He'd never mentioned wine once in his entire life. I clicked through the gallery. Construction photos showing the tasting room build-out. Equipment installations. Barrel rooms with temperature control systems that probably cost more than my entire startup budget. I did the math in my head, then pulled up a calculator to make sure I wasn't losing my mind. $575,000 divided by $40,000. They could have funded my company 14 times over. 14 versions of my dream, and they chose his vineyard instead. Land in Napa. Equipment I couldn't even name. A tasting room for a business that didn't even have operating hours listed yet. Meanwhile, I'd been eating dollar pizza and sleeping on a couch with a broken spring. I looked up flights to Connecticut. Christmas was 3 weeks away. I hadn't planned to go home, told my parents I was too busy with work, which was true. But now? Now I needed to look them in the eye and hear them explain this. I needed to watch them try to justify how Levi's vision of playing winemaker was somehow more valuable than my actual, functioning, revenue-generating company. I booked a ticket for December 23rd. Then I went back to the Vineyard website and took screenshots of everything. Every photo. Every page. Every single detail about the business they believed in more than mine. The house looked exactly the same. Same wreath on the door. Same lights along the gutters. Same rental car from the airport smelling like vanilla air freshener and other people's road trips. I stood on the porch for a full minute before using my key. My mom was in the kitchen when I walked in. She turned from the stove, surprised. "Naomi. I thought you weren't coming until tomorrow." "Changed my flight," I said. No hug. I dropped my bag by the stairs and walked straight to the living room. My dad was reading something on his tablet, feet up on the ottoman. He glanced up, smiled that careful smile he uses when he's not sure what mood I'm in. "Good trip?" "Fine." I sat down across from him. Waited. My mom came in, wiping her hands on a towel. "Are you hungry?" "I can." "Is Levi coming for Christmas?" I asked. They both froze for just a second. That tiny hesitation that confirms everything. "He should be here tomorrow afternoon," my dad said slowly. Why? Good. I want everyone here when we talk. My mom's face shifted. Talk about what? I smiled. Didn't answer. The next day felt like waiting for a storm you could already smell in the air. Levi showed up at 2, driving a car that was definitely nicer than anything he could afford on his own. Hugged our parents, gave me an awkward side squeeze. How's the tech thing going? He asked. The tech thing. Growing, I said. How's the vineyard? His face lit up. He started talking about soil composition and fermentation schedules, words he'd clearly just learned. Our parents listened like he was describing a cure for cancer. I let him finish. Let him feel comfortable. Then I set my phone on the coffee table. So, 575,000, I said. That's the number, right? The room went completely silent. My dad's jaw tightened. My mom reached for her water glass. Levi looked confused. What? The amount Mom and Dad gave you for the vineyard, I continued, voice steady. $575,000. Did I get that right? Naomi, my dad started. I'm just clarifying, I said. Because 2 years ago, when I asked for 40,000, with a business plan, with actual customers, with revenue projections, you said it was too big a risk. My mom set down her glass. It's different. How? Levi's investment is tangible, my dad said, using that calm voice he uses in business meetings. Land holds value. It's a hard asset. I laughed. Actually laughed. And my company doesn't? I had customers. Real contracts. Data showing market demand. But somehow dirt and grapes are more tangible than software that utility companies are actually paying for? We believe in Levi's vision, my dad said. There it was. We believe in Levi's vision. Not, we couldn't afford it. Not, the timing was wrong. Not even, we made a mistake. We believe in Levi's vision. Which meant they didn't believe in mine. Levi was staring at his hands. My mom looked like she wanted to disappear into the couch. Naomi, you have to understand, she began. I understand perfectly, I said, standing up. You had over $500,000 to invest in family. You just didn't think I was worth it. That's not fair, my dad said, voice harder now. You're right. It's not. I picked up my phone. Walked toward the stairs. Where are you going? My mom asked. Out. I need air. What I actually needed was to not say something I'd regret. As I grabbed my coat from the hall closet, I saw it. Just for a second. A folder on my dad's desk in the home office. The door was cracked open. Legal documents. Official seals. The words, Family Trust, visible on the top page. I didn't stop to read more. But I didn't forget it either. I couldn't stop thinking about those documents. Back in Brooklyn, I tried to focus on work. A new client in Maryland needed help restructuring their distribution network. I should have been excited, it was good money, the kind of contract that would have felt like a major win 6 months ago. Instead, I kept seeing that folder on my dad's desk. Family Trust. Why would they need a trust? My parents weren't wealthy enough to worry about estate taxes. They lived comfortably, sure, but not trust fund comfortable. Unless there was something I didn't know about. I called my startup's attorney, Marcus. He'd helped me set up my LLC and navigate some early contract negotiations. Smart guy, didn't charge me for quick questions. Hypothetically, I said, why would a middle-class family need a formal trust structure? Asset protection, usually, Marcus said. Shielding money from lawsuits, creditors, tax liability. Sometimes it's about controlling how money gets distributed to kids or grandkids. What kind of lawsuits? Could be anything. Medical malpractice, business disputes, real estate issues. Depends on their work history. Real estate. My dad had spent 30 years in commercial real estate, mostly in New York before we moved to Connecticut. I'd never thought much about it. He had an office, made deals, came home for dinner. But what if there was more to that story? How would I find out if someone had legal issues? I asked. Like old cases or settlements? Marcus paused. Public records, usually. Court filings are accessible if you know where to look. Want me to do some digging? No, I said quickly. Then reconsidered. Actually, maybe. Just basic stuff. Nothing invasive. Send me names and approximate dates. I'll see what's out there. I gave him my dad's full name, the years he worked in New York, the company names I remembered from old business cards in our junk drawer. 3 days later, Marcus called back. Your dad's name pops up in some property dispute filings from the early 2000s, he said. Nothing criminal, but there were allegations about disclosure violations on a commercial deal in Manhattan. Looks like it's settled out of court, but the case file mentions ongoing compliance monitoring. What does that mean? Means the settlement probably had conditions. Financial reporting requirements, maybe restrictions on certain transactions. Hard to say without seeing the actual agreement. Then my email pinged. Subject line, inquiry regarding Carter Family Trust. Sender, a law firm in Virginia I'd never heard of. My hand started shaking before I even opened it. The email was professional. Polite. Terrifying. Dear Ms. Cross. Our firm represents the Carter Family Trust established in 2019. Recent financial activity has flagged your name as a potential secondary beneficiary. We're reaching out to verify your current contact information and discuss potential obligations related to the trust structure. Obligations. I read it 5 times, then forwarded it to Marcus with a single question. What is this? He called me within an hour. Don't respond yet, he said. Let me make some calls first. Marcus, what's going on? I'm not sure. But if they're contacting you about obligations, it means something changed. Someone either died, got sued, or triggered a clause in the trust agreement. None of those options sounded good. It took Marcus 2 weeks to untangle it. He had a contact at a firm that specialized in asset protection trusts. Made some calls, pulled some public filings, pieced together a picture that made my stomach turn. When he finally explained it to me over coffee, I had to ask him to repeat it twice. Your parents created the trust in 2019, Marcus said, sliding a notepad across the table with a diagram. Right around the time you started your company, actually. They moved most of their significant assets into it, the house, investment accounts, your dad's retirement funds. Why? Protection. Your father's old real estate settlement had a clause. If certain financial thresholds were crossed, or if new business activity triggered a review, the original case could be reopened for additional penalties. So they hid their money. Legally sheltered it, Marcus corrected. But here's where it gets complicated. The trust structure they used has specific rules about distributions. Only one beneficiary can receive large transfers without triggering an audit that would expose the whole arrangement. My throat went dry. Levi. Marcus nodded. Your brother was named the primary distribution beneficiary. Probably because he had no business ties, no commercial activity that would raise flags. Clean financial history. And me? You were establishing a business. Taking on contracts. Creating a financial footprint. If they'd given you money, especially for a company, it would have looked like your father was engaging in new commercial activity through a family member. That could have reopened the original settlement case. I sat back in my chair. Everything suddenly made horrible sense. The careful rejection at the kitchen table. The way they'd exchanged that look. Not like this. They weren't rejecting my business. They were protecting themselves. And using Levi as a firewall. So the vineyard money, I said slowly, that wasn't because they believed in him. Probably not. They needed to move money out of the trust, and he was the only one who could receive it without legal consequences. Does Levi know? Marcus shrugged. Hard to say. He might think he's the favorite. Or he might be completely in the dark about why he's really getting funded. I stared at my coffee, watching it go cold. My parents hadn't chosen Levi over me because they loved him more. They'd chosen him because he was useful. And they'd let me believe I wasn't good enough rather than tell me the truth. Here's the thing, Marcus said quietly. They don't know you know any of this. He was right. They had no idea I'd found out. Which meant I had something they didn't expect. Information. And time to decide what to do with it. 3 months after learning the truth, my company closed its first major licensing deal. A logistics firm in Illinois signed a 3-year contract worth $230,000. They'd been testing our platform for 6 months, running it alongside their legacy system. Our software cut their routing time by 18%. The contract came through on a Tuesday morning. I sat in my tiny Brooklyn apartment, I'd finally moved off Kira's couch, and stared at the signed PDF. I didn't post about it. Didn't call anyone. Definitely didn't call my parents. 6 weeks later, a utility company in Washington signed on. Multi-year deal, recurring revenue, the kind of contract that investors actually care about. My platform was working. Scaling. Becoming exactly what I'd promised it would be when I sat at that kitchen table 2.5 years ago. But the victory felt hollow. I'd wanted them to see this. To admit they were wrong. To apologize for not believing in me. Now I knew they'd never doubted the business. They'd just been protecting themselves. Which somehow felt worse. I started checking Levi's social media more than I wanted to admit. The vineyard posts had changed. Fewer glossy photos of sunsets over grapevines. More pictures of him alone in the tasting room, captions about challenges of the first year and learning patience. Then the posts slowed down. One every few weeks instead of every few days. I did some digging. Found an industry blog that mentioned Cross Valley Vineyards in a roundup of new Napa ventures facing headwinds. Tough market. High overhead. Competition from established brands. The vineyard was struggling. And my parents' $575,000 was disappearing into California dirt. That same week, I got an email from a private acquisition firm in Minnesota. They'd been watching my company. Liked our customer retention numbers. Wanted to have a preliminary conversation about potential acquisition. I took the call. By the end of the month, they'd made a formal offer. 7 figures. Not quite enough to retire, but enough to matter. Enough to prove something. I didn't sign immediately. Told them I needed time to consider. What I really needed was to sit with this knowledge. To decide what winning actually looked like now. Then my phone buzzed. Voicemail from my dad. Naomi, his voice sounded strained, we need to talk. It's urgent. Call me back as soon as you can. I stared at my phone. Then I deleted the voicemail without calling back. The second voicemail came 2 days later. Then a third. Then my mom started calling. I didn't pick up. Just listened to the messages pile up, each one a little more desperate than the last. Naomi, please. We really need to hear from you. This is important. It's about the family. Sweetheart, I know you're upset, but we have a situation. A situation. I almost laughed. Instead, I did what I'd gotten good at over the past few years. Research. Public records for Napa County showed a lien filed against Cross Valley Vineyards. $53,000 owed to a construction company. Another lien from an equipment supplier for $28,000. Levi's vineyard wasn't just struggling. It was drowning. I found a legal notice buried in a local business journal. Cross Valley Vineyards had 90 days to resolve outstanding debts or face foreclosure proceedings on the property. My parents had given him over $500,000. And he'd burned through it in less than 3 years. But it wasn't just Levi's problem anymore. The trust structure Marcus had explained meant my parents' assets were tangled up in this. If the vineyard went under, if creditors started demanding payment, the whole careful arrangement they'd built could collapse. The thing they'd been trying to avoid, audits, legal exposure, financial scrutiny, was about to happen anyway. Because they'd bet everything on Levi, and he was failing. I pulled up the trust documents Marcus had helped me obtain. Read through the legal language until I found what I was looking for. Secondary beneficiary protocols. Distribution alternatives. Emergency restructuring provisions. There was a clause about transferring assets to a secondary beneficiary if the primary beneficiary's financial position created material risk to the trust structure. That secondary beneficiary was me. They needed my clean financial standing. My LLC. My company that actually worked. They needed exactly what they'd once refused to invest in. The fourth voicemail was my mom, and her voice was shaking. Naomi, I know we hurt you. I know you have every right to be angry. But please, we need to talk about this as a family. There are things you don't understand. Legal complications. Your father's health hasn't been great, and the stress. I stopped the message. Played it again. Your father's health hasn't been great. That was new information. Or maybe it was just strategy. A way to make me feel guilty enough to call back. I looked at the acquisition offer still sitting in my email. 7 figures. Enough to solve their problem and still have plenty left over. Or enough to start over completely. Cut ties. Build something new without their mess attached to it. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Levi. Can we talk? Parents said you're not answering. I need to explain some things. I typed back 4 words. I already know everything. Then I booked a flight to Connecticut. I brought Marcus with me. My parents weren't expecting that. We sat in their living room, the same place where I'd confronted them about the vineyard money 18 months ago. But this time, I had a leather folder and an attorney taking notes. Levi was there too, looking like he hadn't slept in days. My dad's face was gray. Thinner than I remembered. My mom kept twisting her wedding ring. Thank you for coming, my dad said quietly. I didn't respond. Just opened my folder and pulled out the first document. This is a lien notice for $53,000 filed against Cross Valley Vineyards, I said. There's another one for $28,000. And according to Napa County records, you have 72 days before foreclosure proceedings begin. Levi closed his eyes. We're working on it, my dad said. You're not, though. I pulled out another page. Because the trust structure you created means you can't just liquidate assets to cover Levi's debts. Any large transfer triggers exactly the kind of scrutiny you've spent years avoiding. My mom's hand went to her mouth. How do you, my dad started. I know about the New York settlement, I said. The compliance monitoring. The restrictions on your financial activity. I know why you really created the trust. And I know why you gave Levi the money instead of me. The room was completely silent. It wasn't because you believed in his vision, I continued. It was because he was the only one who could receive a large transfer without making it look like you were engaging in new business activity. My dad's jaw tightened. Naomi. I'm not finished. I pulled out the trust documents. You need me now. The secondary beneficiary clause allows asset transfers to me if Levi's situation creates material risk. Which it does. I slid a folder across the coffee table. My attorney prepared restructuring documents. If you sign these, I'll use my company's assets to resolve the immediate debt crisis. The vineyard gets sold to professional management. Proceeds go into a clean trust structure that protects you from legal exposure. My dad reached for the folder. His hands were shaking slightly. What do you want in return? He asked. Full accounting, I said. Every financial decision involving family money for the past 5 years. Complete transparency about the New York case and the settlement terms. And you acknowledge what happened. Acknowledge what? My mom asked. That you chose to protect yourselves instead of supporting me. That you let me think I wasn't good enough rather than telling me the truth. That you used Levi as a shield and let me struggle alone. Levi was staring at the floor. I didn't know, he said quietly. About any of it. They told me it was an investment. That they believed in the vineyard. I looked at him. Saw the same confusion I'd felt 2 years ago at that kitchen table. I know, I said. You were a tool. We both were. My dad set down the folder. You have every right to be angry. I'm past angry, I said. Now I'm just deciding what kind of relationship we have going forward. If we have one at all. My mom's eyes filled with tears. Naomi, we were trying to protect you. By lying? By letting me max out credit cards and sleep on a couch while you funneled over $500,000 to Levi? We thought if you knew about the legal issues, you'd be implicated, my dad said. We were keeping you separate. Safe. You were keeping yourself safe, I corrected. I was just collateral damage. I stood up. Marcus gathered his notes. You have 48 hours to review the terms, I said. Sign them or don't. Either way, I'm done carrying your secrets. I walked toward the door. Wait, my mom said. How are you paying for all this? The attorney, the debt resolution. I turned back. My company's being acquired. 7 figures. Turns out my vision was worth believing in after all. They signed. It took them 46 hours, but they signed. I accepted the acquisition offer the same day. Used a portion to create a clean financial structure that resolved the vineyard debts and separated my parents' assets from Levi's failing business. The vineyard was sold to a management company that actually knew how to run one. Levi walked away with nothing, but at least without debt crushing him. My parents got to keep their house and retirement accounts, protected under a new trust that didn't require lying or using their kids as chess pieces. And I kept most of the acquisition money for myself. The accounting they provided was exactly as bad as I'd expected. Years of careful maneuvering, shifting money between accounts, using Levi's name on documents to avoid triggering reviews of my dad's old case. They'd been so focused on protecting themselves from a legal threat that might never actually come, they'd sacrificed everything else. Including us. 3 months later, we had dinner together for the first time since the restructuring. Not at their house. Neutral territory. A restaurant halfway between their town and New Haven. My dad looked older. The gray I'd noticed before had spread. He moved more carefully, like something hurt that he wasn't mentioning. How's the new venture? He asked. After the acquisition, I'd started working on a second company. Clean energy consulting, helping other startups avoid the mistakes I'd made. Fully self-funded this time. Growing, I said. Slowly. but on solid ground. My mom reached across the table, stopped just short of touching my hand. We're proud of you. I know we don't have the right to say that, but we are. You could have been proud 4 years ago, I said. When I first asked for help. We should have been, my dad admitted. We should have found another way. Levi had moved back east. Got a job in hospitality management, something with normal hours and a steady paycheck. He'd apologized to me privately, said he was sorry for being part of their plan without knowing it. I believed him. Didn't mean we were close, but I believed him. The New York case settled, my dad said quietly. Finally. After 23 years, they closed the compliance monitoring. We're clear. I nodded. Didn't say what I was thinking, that they'd wasted 2 decades running from something that eventually resolved anyway. So it was all for nothing, my mom said, reading my face. Not nothing, I said. You protected yourself. That's what you chose. We chose wrong, my dad said. The waiter brought our food. We ate in careful silence, the kind where everyone's aware of how fragile this thing between us still is. Before we left, my mom asked the question I knew was coming. Can you forgive us? I thought about it. Really thought about it. I don't know yet, I said honestly. Maybe someday. Right now, I'm just trying to figure out what this relationship looks like going forward. What do you want it to look like? She asked. Honest, I said. No more secrets. No more protection that actually hurts. If we're going to be family, we have to actually trust each other. My dad nodded slowly. We can do that. Can you? I asked. Because you spent 20 years proving you couldn't. He didn't have an answer for that. We split the check. Said awkward goodbyes in the parking lot. Made vague plans to do this again in a few months. As I drove back to Brooklyn, I realized something. I didn't need their approval anymore. Didn't need them to believe in my vision or validate my choices. I'd built something real without them. And I could keep building, whether they were part of it or not. That security, knowing I'd survive either way, was worth more than any investment they could have given me. The question now wasn't whether they'd finally chosen me. It was whether I'd choose them. And unlike 4 years ago, when I'd sat at their kitchen table asking for $40,000, this time the decision was entirely mine. Some days I think I'll let them back in completely. Other days, I'm not so sure. But at least now, I'm the one holding the power. And they're the ones waiting to see what I'll do with it. Was protecting me worth losing my trust?